Hello and welcome to Money Matters TV. My name is Michael Verrill and I'm the Vice President of Strategic Development with the Sharp Financial Group. As an integrated financial management company, we work with founders and second-generation owners to help maximize business value, increase cash flow, and reduce tax liability, and help transition the most valuable asset to long-term family wealth and future legacy. Thank you for joining us for our continuing discussion of growth stories, where we hear from entrepreneurs and advisors sharing secrets and advice on what business owners need to know to grow. From time to time, financial issues relating to healthcare, life sciences, or technology companies may be discussed on this show. Those discussions are not and should not be considered financial advice. Moreover, since the program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, some of the discussions may not be any more relevant. You should always seek advice from your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm joined today by my guest, Thad Bench. Thad is the CEO and owner of Benchworks and subsidiary company SafeChain Solutions. Benchworks is a full-service partner for marketing, creative, pharmaceutical consulting, market development for licensed products, logistics management, and wholesale distribution for the healthcare industry. Started in 1991 as a marketing promotions company, the company relied on Thad's hard work and can-do attitude to help build it up to the success it has achieved today. Thad's non-traditional upbringing, helping him create friends faster and adapt to change and also relate to people at all levels, was key and helped give Thad the key attributes he needed to achieve the success he has. It is my pleasure to welcome Thad Bench to Growth Stories. Hello, Thad.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to be here.
Great. I'm excited to have you share some insight and stories on your background and also some advice for our entrepreneur viewers.
Sure.
But before we do that, I've got a question from one of our viewers, and I'm hoping you can help me answer it.
Sure.
Great. So Ann Victor of Malvern would like to know, as to a business real estate issue, are there any organizations that can help resolve problems other than a real estate attorney? First of all, Ann, for any legal matters, please seek legal advice. Other than that, Thad, I know you've owned and leased real estate in regards to supporting your business. Are there any other people you turn to for advice to help you through that process other than a real estate attorney?
Yeah, sure. I mean, many times you'll be using, obviously, a commercial real estate broker, and they are a wealth of information for you. But also, when I was doing real estate transactions, I would seek out friends and people I respected who've been successful in real estate. And one key lesson I learned, a fellow by the name of Jeff Verrill up in Princeton, New Jersey, and Trenton area, started to develop small parcels of commercial real estate. He firewalled them off, and then as he went forward, he met with success, and he was asked to participate in much larger deals. And he had the restraint and the discipline to say, you know what, I'm going to not do that and bet the entire enterprise.
Right.
And perhaps he missed out on some upside, but he also mitigated some downside risk.
Sure.
And so I thought that was a good advice. So seek out people who've been successful in doing the work, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you.
Well, that's great advice, and hopefully that's helpful for you, seeking out advice from not only real estate brokers, but other folks who have met in a similar situation. So it is always great to hear from our viewers. To send for a future show, here's how to send your questions to Money Matters.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Welcome back. Thad, we don't often get to meet with Indiana farm boys or successful Caribbean sailors, and very much less often than the same seat. So both those environments were a big part of your upbringing. Can you share the story of how that came to be and kind of how that helped shape you today?
Sure. It was fortuitous for me, I think. My parents are a little bit older when I came on the scene. My brothers were already off in boarding school, so they weren't going to let a young boy get in the way of their adventures. So they decided they were going to cruise in the Caribbean on a boat as part of a big goal of theirs, and so they took me with them. So I spent half a year on a boat cruising all over the Caribbean, and half a year at a farm in Goshen, Indiana, where I had Mennonite and Amish neighbors. So it was a very different type of upbringing. The interesting thing about the Caribbean experience in particular was I would go from school to school. Sometimes I was only at a school for 2 months at a time, and while that wasn't the best for maybe mastering algebra or geometry, what it did do is give me an opportunity to learn how to make friends, how to be social, because you had to break into a group. And frankly, that's been a big help to me in the business world. I like to focus on business development and learning how to work a room and do all those things that are required to grow your business. So to me, I thought it was a great upbringing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's very interesting. Your business now is based on the Eastern Shore. So, having spent a little bit of time there, I saw some similarities in the background. Obviously, you got wide open expanse of farmland and close to some of the best sailing around with the Chesapeake. Is that what drew you there? Like, is that part of that story too?
That's a big part of it. So my wife and I, Renee, we've been living in Annapolis for many years, and I have a saying, if your life was a book, would anybody want to read it? And so I'm very happy in Annapolis, but for commercial reasons, I was traveling to Philadelphia quite a bit, starting to go up and down the Eastern Shore. And then all of a sudden, I just got this idea, this reminds me of Indiana, just like you said, right on the Chesapeake Bay. And so my wife was keen to make the move, and so we bought an old farmhouse in the 18th century, and then actually had our business there for a period of time until we outgrew it. So it's a great, for us, it works out very, very well.
Great, that's great. So that's kind of who you were growing up, shaped with that environment. And then we always like to look at the individual and experiences they had that kind of created that entrepreneurial spirit. Obviously, you're a successful entrepreneur. Try to understand where that bug came from. I know while you were in college, your father, he had a nice big CEO job at a big company in the kitchen cabinet space, and probably very nice, safe kind of thing, as safe as a CEO job can be, right?
Right.
But then he decided to go out on his own and start his own business in that kind of similar space. And then after college, you came and worked for him. Do you think that's where you started to get that initial
I watched my father in business, and he gave me a couple of real gifts. One, something I've done with my own children, is I take them along with me, even when they're little guys, and take them on some business trips when they weren't in school. And then they learn how business meetings are done and just how to react. And so that since I was a little boy, I would go along, and that's something that kind of gave me the bug to be in business. And then my father really gave me the biggest gift of all, in that he gave me an opportunity. He had bought a door manufacturing business that had frankly gone bankrupt. I was taking a break between college and going to graduate school, and he asked me if I'd go down and take a stab at running this business, and it was the best education I possibly could get, because I had the luxury of making safe mistakes. If I was going to make a really big mistake, my father would reel me in.
Right.
But he let me try things and learn. And you are not going to learn about business. You have to try. You have to take some risk, and along the way, you're going to make some mistakes. But that experience was terrific in that I ran it for 10 years, and so it taught me a lot about grit and how to sell and how to stick with something, and then ultimately we were successful in selling it to Geldman, which is a large privately held at the time forest products company. So it was a great outcome, but that was where it started. And
that's great.
It was pretty exciting.
So it is risky to be an entrepreneur, right? And you have to really be able to take some of that risk, but what a great environment to have your father kind of support you through that risky period and be able to safely learn from those mistakes. So you grew that business, and then you sell it to a big competitor, I guess.
Yes,
Kind of
right.
Talk about that process. Like,
Yeah.
how did Geldwin know who you were? How did they know who your door manufacturing company was, or Thad Bench? And
Pretty early in the business, when I started to get a little bit of a situational awareness, I realized that we were kind of in a tough spot. We had large vertically integrated competitors, so my goal was to become an irritant to one of those large competitors. So that's exactly what I did. I keyed in on some of their key accounts. And they noticed that, and so they were going through an acquisition spree. And a fellow by the name of Doug Kinsinger, a real gentleman, called my office phone one day and introduced himself. Said, "Thad, I'm Doug Kinsinger. I run mergers and acquisitions for Geldwin. We're been noticing your company. We'd like to buy it. How do you feel about that?" And of course, I'm like jumping up and down in my chair.
Right.
I say, "We're not for sale."
Yeah. Hard to get, right?
You got to play a little bit of hard to get.
Absolutely.
But it was then a negotiation ensued, and then ultimately we were able to consummate the deal. But they came in, they were sophisticated, and they were offered us just enough money to kind of get us out. And I've been working at this for 10 years, and I said, "Look, I'm not gonna, and I wanted out, but I said, I'm not going to go out just for that." And so the negotiation broke off. A year later, they came back and they gave us just a modicum more money to make us so we could hold our head high and maybe buy
Leave
a little
with
bit.
Some respect, right?
Some respect.
Absolutely.
It was definitely not retirement money. They got a great deal, but I learned a lot, and then I went to work for Geldwin for a couple of years. I think it's important. You grow up in a family business.
Yeah.
It's important to work for somebody who doesn't have the same last name.
So what was that like? That transition from working for that business that basically you were running for 10 years to now going with a big company like Geldwin?
Yeah, I learned a lot, and as one would expect. And fortunately, I had some terrific bosses there. Bob Turner, who was my boss, taught me something that was really valuable to me. And we didn't see each other that much. He was on the West Coast and I was on the East Coast, and he was an incredibly busy guy. But when he did his review, he would come in, he would tell his administrator, "Hold my calls." He'd turn his computer off, and he would say, "This is our time together. And for the next hour, I'm not going to talk to anybody. I just want to see how things are going for you and give you some feedback." And that's something that I was so impressed with, because he was way above my pay grade, obviously. But the fact that he would take that level of attention, it really made me feel special. And that's something, frankly, that I've incorporated into our culture, because ultimately it's all about our people.
Sure.
And so treating that level of respect and something we call graciousness is a big part of our culture.
Yeah, that's great. And you've worked that graciousness kind of into the culture of the business today, and we could talk about that in a little bit. But,
Sure.
But that's a really neat lesson. I mean, when anybody, right, you feel like somebody's engaged with you in that moment, that makes you feel special.
That's absolutely.
He was able to transfer that feeling to you. That's fantastic. Yeah. So you work for Geldwin for a couple years, and you get that big company experience. And I'm sure that the way you ran your company and the way they ran theirs was completely different, right? Not different in a sense that it was, but more complex, more layers, more approval, all of those things at big companies. So do you get tired of that?
No.
How do you get out of that?
I loved it, and but we still had a pretty robust building materials distribution business.
Okay.
And my father at that point was getting older, and his health was beginning to fail. So I said, I need to get back, because we saw, again, vertically integrated competitors coming in, and I knew that was probably where the bulk of my financial future might be riding at the moment. So I wanted to make sure that we were taking the necessary steps to continue to grow that business. Right. So what we ended up doing as a strategy was saying, all right, faced with the competition, how could we differentiate ourselves? And so at that time, what we did is that we went to our residential building customers and said, look, not only will we distribute the building materials to you, we will estimate, we will distribute, and we will install.
Okay.
And so in a matter of about 3.5 years, we went from a $10 million business to a $30 million business, because it was an incredibly attractive service offering. It solved a lot of problems for the builders. Our sort of hook was, if we do this for you, you have to buy all the phases of construction that we supply.
Right.
And they did.
Right.
And it went so well that some of our customers asked us to open up an operation in Raleigh-Durham, and then also in Charlotte. And so in an act of perfect market timing, we had grown the business considerably. We were making money. We also had a fair amount of debt. I said, maybe it's time for us to take a look at this and see if we should exit. And we did right before the biggest building boom in history in 2000.
Excellent, right.
But I was glad.
Right?
But I was glad that I didn't own that business in 2008, 2009.
Sure.
But it was a great experience for me.
Plenty of stories, unfortunately, of folks that own building supply businesses.
Yeah, it was a tough period.
When it's time to sell, you got to sell. You can't. If you try to time the market, you usually end up on the wrong side.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you've helped your father build that business. That's an interesting integration approach. I think we're doing that in our business, integrating multiple services so that the customer has one point of contact and you take care of everything for them. So that was really a differentiator. It really set you apart in what is typically a very margin compressed, very competitive business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It was very effective.
Good. So now you're out of that business, and you're going to go sit on a beach somewhere?
No. The capital
for,
stack was not to be. Again, we had some success with that, but along that time, we also had we had the building materials business. My other brother had started a promotions business, literally a Chotsky company, trinkets and trash. I called it branded product. It made it sound better.
Right.
But it was actually quite a good business, and we had a very good customer. This is back in the day. We had Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. So prior to 2008, 2009, you go into the regulations changed. Your doctor's office was replete with all sorts of things that had brand names on it.
Right.
So I got into that business, and I wanted to diversify out, and this is part of a real family business. This part of the story. So I noticed my brother was coming in later, leaving earlier. I was working like crazy, and obviously there's a tension there. And so I just said, well, maybe it would make sense for me to buy my brother out, and that would be a way to solve that problem. And lo and behold, the reason that my brother was coming in later and leaving earlier is that he had undiagnosed cancer. And so once he was diagnosed, we both kind of looked at each other, and I said, oh, Dave, no wonder you didn't feel like having your head in the game. And it really helped. He passed away shortly thereafter. But that's the reality of business. And I think that everyone, particularly in family businesses, there are all kinds of dynamics that present themselves, wives or in-laws or whatever the case might be. It's complicated, but alas, that's what happened. So I ended up buying actually both of my brothers out, and went completely independent of them in 2001.
Right. So 2001, and you're starting to diversify that business at that time.
Yeah. We were pretty focused on trying to grow the core business and make payroll.
Right. Not get too creative.
Not get too creative. Stick to our core. But we were beginning to really get some good traction. I was the principal business development guy, and then what ended up sort of being the shift for us is that we would go to meetings, or partners meetings, and I used to go to Saatchi & Saatchi, and I'd walk in the door and they'd say, oh, it's Thad, the Chotsky guy. And I'd be like, yeah, that's me. And there's nothing wrong with that business, by the way. It's a very, very good business, but for the fancy agency people, that's not the sexiest thing in the world. But I was a very active participant in these partners meetings because we'd be talking about messaging, and we'd be talking about new entrants into the marketplace and how we respond to that. And then the Wyeth, who was the ultimate customer at this time, reached out to me and said, hey, Dad, can we have a meeting? And the brand manager said, we pay an agency a lot of money to come up with ideas, and we're activating a lot of yours. Would you be willing to set up a small team of designers and start doing some direct mail for us? And that was the break that we needed to start to diversify out. And I think the lesson there in that is that you may be pigeonholed into one part of the business, but it doesn't mean where you have to be. Present good ideas, be prepared, and take a little bit of risk of raising your hand and getting out there. And people want that. They add that value. But that's really how we got our start to diversify, to go towards a full service agency.
Yeah, growth in a business typically comes from the strategy side of it, right? I mean, if you would have just kept doing what you were doing, you wouldn't have had the opportunity.
The thing that really was surprising to me, that when the regulations changed and pharmaceutical companies were no longer allowed to put medicine brand names on, promotional product, that would have been the death knell for us if we had not diversified. So we had, I wanted to because I thought it was just more interesting and I was fascinated by growing into a full agency. So we just bridged that divide. And so we had a little bit of a lean year, but then managed to diversify and survive. But that's, I think, one of the lessons that all business people have to think about is, diversification and their revenue streams, and also being aware of the environment and what sort of strategic threats might be on the horizon.
Yeah, and you have a different seat at the table, right? You feel a different level with the client, and that partnering you talk about, that happens much more on the strategic level than the guy that you, as you said, is providing the tchotchkes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you study up on the business and really and that's something that we do to this day. Now we've grown significantly and have dozens and dozens of life science companies that we work with.
Yeah.
But our goal is to advance their commercial goals as best we can. Any of our clients, we're not all pharma, but that's really the big piece for us, is do what's best for your client all the time. And again, we're privately held. We really don't have an exit strategy. My son just joined the business.
Oh, fantastic.
Our goal is to grow a really holistic business and think about the long term.
That's great. That's great. So one of the things you did when you took over the business from your brother was you moved the business to, I guess, where you were living at the time.
Yes, right.
On the Eastern Shore there. I don't know if entrepreneurs often think of that as a big commercial area for
No,
business,
it's not,
but
actually.
there's a lot of benefits that you have. You hire from the college, you're involved in Washington College down there. Talk about that a little, the environment that's created for you in the business.
So we are headquartered in Chestertown, Maryland, and for a period of time, long time actually, for about 5 years, we officed out of a converted dairy barn. And so people think, what is this going to be all about? So I saw this big heap of a building, had dairy equipment in it, and it was just a mess. But as I was looking at the milking parlors, I was like, these actually could be offices. So we restored the thing, and believe me, it was pretty rustic. We used to joke that it was climate controlled, and that the climate controlled the temperature inside the barn. But we did good work there, and when our clients did come and see us, they appreciated the sincerity, they appreciated the low overhead, and the work was terrific that we were doing. And maybe the fact that we had a couple of friendly Labrador retrievers running around didn't hurt either. But then ultimately we grew that business but we're still headquartered in Philadelphia, but now we have offices in Fishtown in Philadelphia, which we're very excited about, attracting lots of new talent there.
Great. And you're talking about possibly expanding
up to Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, up to Boston.
Huge life sciences marketplace there as well.
Absolutely.
That's great. When you were telling me that story about the barn and the initial, so that creates a certain culture. I was curious, as you continue to grow and get larger, now you got the office in Fishtown, you want to expand. What are some of the things that you do as an owner to make sure that culture that you started, that those clients really appreciate it? How does that transcend the growth of the business?
Yeah, that's a very, very important issue. And again, along the way, about 2 years ago, we have our agency business growing, and then we acquired a company called Safe Chain Solutions, which is in the pharmaceutical drug distribution business. So that added even another element of different organization. And I think the biggest piece is again, this concept of graciousness and treating each other with a lot of respect, our clients with respect. Helps, and also just being engaged and having an open door policy. And frankly, anytime you get a group of 100 or so folks, you're going to have some different sort of personalities in there.
Absolutely.
And if you have somebody who's got some sharp elbows in the organization, well, that's okay. They care, but also you need to do some coaching there to say, look, we're going to preserve our culture. And ultimately, we've had to transition some people out because they couldn't get that. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't work hard or fast, or we don't have rigorous debate about differences of opinion, but you could do it in a way that at the end of the day, you can go have a beer with somebody and still feel good about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you spend so much time at work, and committed to clients and the services you provide. It's nice to have that connection with the folks that you're working with, right?
Absolutely.
And know that you're getting that respect, but also giving that respect and that graciousness you talk about. That's really
very important.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned, or we just talked about, was the expansion. So you went to Fishtown. Now you're looking at Boston. For entrepreneurs growing their businesses and kind of getting to that stage of, do I expand geographically or do I just try to service clients elsewhere from here? Like, take us through that thought process a little bit. How do you say, what are the things you're looking at? Is it access to talent? Is it closer to clients? Like, what are some of the drivers for that expansion?
So I think as we grew, and when I was earlier in my career, I'd be focusing on the P&L, how are we making money? Ultimately, you need to focus in on your balance sheet and making sure that you've got necessary capital stack to be able to augment your market area, open up a new office. So there's that. So you have to have the resources to do it. Right. And then secondly, does it make sense? Are you closer to your customers? Is there some sort of differentiation point? And also, frankly, for me, I like to pick places that I like to go. So you have choices, right? So fortunately,
perks of ownership.
Perks of ownership. And so Philadelphia, Boston, and then working with our colleagues at SafeChain, again, immensely likable guys, Charlie and Pat Boyd, who run the business down there. And then they had an office in Miami, a sales office, actually.
Okay.
Didn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah,
so they had that, and I said, okay, this could be good.
Sure. Familiar for you, right?
Yes, right. Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, so to me, it's just making sure that you stay, any expansion that you take is aligned to what your resources are, and have a little bit of patience too. Mm-hmm. Don't get out over your skis. What we like to do is we seed a market with business development people, get a core amount of business going, and then clients like to see a commitment. Mm-hmm. They're saying, are you really going to be in Philadelphia? Yes, we have an office. Come see it. And they see that, and that gives them a lot of comfort that you're there for the long term.
Right. Well, that's great. That's good to think about.
Sure.
So a couple more minutes here, wrap up. We talked about a lot of different things. If you could share a point or two of, I guess, lessons that you learned along the way, but if someone were sitting in front of you and said, hey, Thad, could you give me a quick 2 or 3 points of advice? What are some of the things you'd share with somebody that it's maybe a few years before you from a business standpoint, and their business hasn't reached the level of yours, and they're trying to grow there into that? Any?
Absolutely. I think a couple points. One thing is that people are inherently good, and if you ask people for help, they will give you help. So if it's clients, if it's vendors, if it's your banker, ask for that help, and they're inclined to do that. And then 2, do what you say you're going to do, and have the courage to power through difficult periods. And if you're an entrepreneur, there are dark days. I mean, there are cash flow crunches, there are all manner of problems, but then you realize as you go forward that an experience puts a little bark on you, and then you realize, okay, I have the wherewithal and the mental fortitude to power through anything, and it gets a lot easier.
Well, that's great. One book that you could recommend that's been helpful that you've read recently that our readers might appreciate?
And I'm going to forget the author's name, which I should have done, but The Hard Things About the Hard Things.
Okay.
Terrific book. CEO of a tech company that, and it deals with how to fire a family member, how to deal with cash flow problems, how to deal with all manner of controversies, raising capital. Right. Fascinating book. And then anything that Jack Welch writes, I know I enjoy his older stuff as well, but I find a lot of value in those as well.
Well, this has been fantastic, Thad. I'm sure we could go on for forever here with this exciting story, and there's more story to be told as these companies both continue to grow. Thank you very much for having spent time with me today. Thank you very much for joining us for our continued discussion on growth stories. We appreciate your visiting us. If you want to see the future shows or download this show, you can turn to podcast or iTunes. You can also see the programs on the YouTube channel or money-matterstv.com. Thank you.